Terrifying medieval legends that scientists just proved were 100% real. What if I told you that some of the most horrifying medieval legends weren't just stories told around campfires to scare children? What if the monsters, curses, and supernatural events that people whispered about in dark corners were actually based on terrifying reality? For centuries, historians dismissed these tales as mere folklore. But recent scientific discoveries have turned everything upside down. Today, we're diving into 5 medieval legends that modern science has proven were absolutely, horrifyingly real. Before we begin this spine-chilling journey through history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what we've uncovered about our dark past. The dancing plague. Our first terrifying legend comes from medieval Europe. The dancing plague. For hundreds of years, people told stories of entire communities suddenly breaking into uncontrollable, violent dancing that lasted for days, weeks, or even months, until the dancers collapsed from exhaustion or died. The most famous case allegedly occurred in Strasbourg in 1518. Where a woman named Frau Trophia began dancing frantically in the street. Within days, dozens of others joined her. Within a month, over 400 people were trapped in this deadly dance, with some reportedly dying from heart attacks, strokes, and sheer exhaustion. For centuries, skeptics claimed this was just mass hysteria or religious fanaticism. But here's where it gets terrifying. Modern scientists have proven this was absolutely real. Recent research has identified the culprit: ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain, especially during wet, humid conditions. When consumed, it causes hallucinations, muscle spasms, and convulsions that can last for extended periods. The symptoms perfectly match historical descriptions of the dancing plague. But here's the most chilling part. Scientists found that ergot contains compounds similar to LSD. Imagine entire medieval communities unknowingly consuming natural hallucinogens in their daily bread, then being trapped in terrifying, uncontrollable episodes that could last for months. The agony these people endured was unimaginable. Archaeological evidence from affected regions shows grain stores contaminated with ergot, and medical records from the period describe symptoms that align perfectly with ergot poisoning. What medieval people thought was a supernatural curse was actually a chemical nightmare hidden in their food supply. The vampires of Venice. Next, we travel to medieval Venice, where legends spoke of bloodthirsty creatures rising from plague pits to terrorize the living. These weren't the romantic vampires of modern fiction. These were described as rotting, hungry corpses that emerged during times of plague to spread death and disease. Venetian chronicles from the 14th and 15th centuries describe mysterious figures seen near mass graves during plague outbreaks, accompanied by reports of bite marks on victims and unexplained deaths that followed the same pattern as the original plague. For centuries, this was dismissed as medieval superstition born from fear and ignorance about disease. But in 2009, archaeologists made a discovery that changed everything. During excavations of a 16th-century plague pit on the Venetian island of Lazzaretto Nuovo, researchers found the skeleton of a woman with a brick jammed between her jaws. This was no accident. It was a deliberate vampire burial. Further investigation revealed that this practice was widespread during plague outbreaks. Medieval Venetians were actually performing anti-vampire rituals on corpses because they genuinely believed the dead were returning as blood-sucking monsters. But here's the scientific truth that's even more terrifying. The vampires were real, just not supernatural. During plague outbreaks, bodies were often buried hastily in mass graves. As decomposition gases built up, corpses would appear to move, groan, or even sit up. Blood and fluids would seep from the mouth, creating the illusion that the dead were feeding. Medieval people, witnessing these horrifying post-mortem phenomena without understanding decomposition science, created elaborate vampire legends and rituals to protect themselves. The vampires they feared were actually the natural, but utterly terrifying, reality of mass death and decay. The werewolves of Normandy. Our third legend takes us to medieval Normandy, where tales of werewolves terrorized entire regions. These weren't just stories. Historical records describe savage attacks by creatures that witnesses swore were humans transformed into wolves. The most documented case involves a man named Pierre Bergot and Michel Verdun in 1521. Court records describe them confessing to transforming into wolves and devouring children. Multiple witnesses testified to seeing these men change form and commit horrific acts of cannibalism and murder. For centuries, historians assumed these were cases of mass hysteria or false confessions extracted through torture. But modern forensic science and psychology have revealed the terrifying truth. Scientists have identified a rare genetic condition called hypertrichosis, which causes excessive hair growth all over the body and face, creating a wolf-like appearance. Combined with rabies infection, which causes aggressive behavior, hallucinations, and hydrophobia, affected individuals would exhibit behavior that perfectly matched werewolf descriptions. But the most chilling discovery involves ergot poisoning again. Recent analysis shows that many werewolf cases occurred during the same periods and regions where grain supplies were contaminated with ergot. The hallucinogenic effects could cause people to believe they were transforming into animals, while also making them extremely violent and aggressive. DNA analysis of medieval burial sites has confirmed the presence of individuals with hypertrichosis, and historical medical records describe symptoms consistent with both rabies and ergot poisoning in regions where werewolf legends were strongest. The werewolves weren't supernatural shapeshifters. They were real people suffering from a combination of genetic conditions, diseases, and chemical poisoning that created the perfect storm for these terrifying legends. The living dead of Scotland. Our fourth legend comes from medieval Scotland, where chronicles describe the dead rising from their graves to attack the living, spreading plague and death wherever they went. These revenants were said to be different from vampires. They were rotting, shambling corpses that couldn't be killed by conventional means. Scottish historical records from the 12th century describe entire villages being evacuated due to attacks by these walking dead. The Chronicles of William of Newburgh document multiple cases of corpses rising from graves to terrorize communities, often during outbreaks of disease. Modern archaeologists have made discoveries that prove these legends had a basis in horrifying reality. Excavations of medieval Scottish cemeteries have revealed numerous deviant burials, skeletons with stones placed on their chests, iron stakes driven through their hearts, or heads removed and placed between their legs. But the scientific explanation is more terrifying than any supernatural tale. During medieval times, understanding of death and decomposition was extremely limited. People were sometimes buried alive due to misdiagnosis of death, especially during plague outbreaks when bodies were processed quickly. Recent forensic analysis of medieval burial sites shows evidence of people being buried while still alive, scratch marks inside coffins, disturbed burial positions, and injuries consistent with attempts to escape burial. Some of these individuals may have actually clawed their way out of shallow graves, appearing as the living dead to terrified medieval communities. Additionally, the practice of mass burial during plague outbreaks meant that decomposing bodies would sometimes shift and move due to gases and natural processes, creating the illusion of reanimated corpses. The living dead of Scottish legend were real people either buried alive and escaping their graves, or victims of natural decomposition processes that medieval people couldn't understand. The Beast of Gavaudan, our final legend, takes us to medieval France, where stories tell of a massive supernatural wolf that terrorized the region of Gavaudan between 1764 and 1767. This creature was said to be larger than any natural wolf, with unusual coloring and the ability to walk on its hind legs like a human. Historical records document over 100 attacks attributed to this beast, with dozens of confirmed deaths. Witnesses described a creature that was larger than a wolf, with unusual reddish fur and the intelligence to avoid traps and organized hunts. For centuries, this was dismissed as an exaggerated folktale. But modern DNA analysis and archaeological evidence have revealed the shocking truth. Scientists have identified the Beast of Gavaudan as a real animal, likely a hybrid between wolves and large dogs, possibly created through controlled breeding. Recent genetic analysis of preserved specimens from the period confirms the existence of wolf-dog hybrids with unusual size and characteristics that match historical descriptions. But here's the most terrifying part. Evidence suggests this wasn't a random occurrence. Historical records indicate that someone may have deliberately created and trained these hybrid creatures as weapons of terror, possibly during political conflicts of the period. The Beast of Gavaudan wasn't a supernatural monster. It was a real, artificially created predator that was deliberately unleashed on innocent people. These 5 legends prove that medieval people weren't just superstitious, they were trying to make sense of real, terrifying phenomena that science couldn't yet explain. From chemical poisoning to genetic disorders, from burial practices to hybrid animals, the truth behind these legends is often more frightening than the supernatural explanations. What makes these discoveries even more chilling is realizing that our ancestors lived through these horrors without understanding what was happening to them. They faced dancing plagues, vampire attacks, werewolf assaults, walking dead, and monster hunts as everyday realities, creating elaborate mythologies to cope with inexplicable terror. Modern science has proven that the medieval world was far more dangerous and mysterious than we ever imagined. These weren't just stories. They were survival guides for people living through nightmares we can barely comprehend. What other medieval legends do you think might be based on terrifying reality? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking historical discoveries that will change how you see the past forever. The line between legend and reality is thinner than you think, and sometimes, the truth is far more terrifying than fiction.